They're expensive enough, but.
I'm pretty sure we really need is that. I don't think we need the rest of those. Let me. You've got this in your packet too. How do you do this full screen? That's not the presentation.
Orientation.
I don't think this is. You know what? I don't think that's what it is.
So
It's
just
this.
hit refresh. Oh, is
That's it.
it there? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, we don't need that one. This is the one. I'll let you.
This meeting will be conducted in person in the Sanford City Council chambers and via video and teleconference pursuant to 1 MRSA Section 403-B2D and Section 6 of the Sanford City Council Rules and Procedure as amended and adopted May 3, 2022. Members of the public may join the meeting by phone by dialing 1-929-205-6099 using meeting ID 895-9797-0880 and password 410992 or via computer at the link provided. Members of the public may also submit comments via the Sanford, City of Sanford website at the website provided. Could we?
City council meeting.
That's not on my thing.
No, but it's at the top of the thing. It's the city council meeting for January 17th.
Oh, this is a city council meeting for January 17th, 2023. Would you all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? Join me for a moment of silence, please. Thank you. Now roll call. Deputy Mayor Herlihy,
Present.
Councilor Stackpole,
Present.
Councilor Hanselman,
Present.
Councilor Martell,
Present.
Councilor Trench-Montagne,
Present.
and I'm Mayor Brink. Also present are City Manager Steve Buck and Executive Assistant Larissa Ricketts. Now for the minutes, 2330-01. In order to approve the minutes from the regular City Council meeting held on January 3rd, 2023, motion to approve.
Motion to approve as written.
Second.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor? Thank you. And now for the mayor's report. Please bear with me. This is my very first report, so it's very long-winded. We are continuing to meet about the budget. There are daily meetings to address the budget, starting with department meetings and also council meetings. This year, the City Council will be overseeing the school budget for the first time and developing both together. I'd like to give you a little heads up on the budget and some of the issues we are facing. Retaining employees has been an issue in all communities, and so we are trying to take a look at our pay scale and to figure out how can we keep all of our employees and to also fill some of the vacancies that we have, as we have not been able to obtain certain employees. While developing the school budget, we have to keep in mind safety issues, as you are all aware of what happened in the fall, and that we need to address also the social emotional needs of the students because of the 3 years of COVID. The cost of living increase, as we all know, every time we go to the grocery store, I don't know about you, but every time I go, it seems like the price goes up. And I know that when we were buying some building supplies, the price of that also went up. So the city is facing the exact same things that you at home are facing. Last week, the city council, Steve Buck and Larissa Ricketts, we had a workshop together, which was just phenomenal. We addressed several areas. We looked at our city goals and evaluated them, and we're in the process of rewriting some of those to make it even clearer to the community, and then we'll be posting those when they are done. We also discussed during this meeting how we function as a committee, and we learned a lot about each other, and we also are learning how to be a team and understanding that we aren't always going to all vote the same way, and to be accepting of one another's differences. As we move forward this year with creating our agendas, we have come to the conclusion that things that we put onto the agenda need to relate to our goals, and we don't need to jump down little rabbit holes chasing other things, because that will take us away from what the most important things are for our community. We talked about the roadblocks to developing like businesses and housing and having developments come into our community. And we talked about how can we remove those roadblocks. So there were some pretty hard, serious talks centered around that, and we're going to be moving ahead with a plan. We also realized that many of you have no idea how many new businesses have come to Sanford recently and how many businesses had expanded. So we're going to come, not only are we going to be doing it via the computer, we're going to see how we can do it in these meetings to update you on what's happening so that everybody has a chance to understand that. So that's my mayor's report. Now we're going to move on to subcommittee reports, which is also partly me. We have multiple subcommittees for those people who don't know, and a lot of the stuff that we talk about on the agenda comes from a subcommittee, and they're looking at it first, and then it's given back to us to vote on it. So sometimes it might appear that we as a council are voting for something that we've just briefly talked about, but really it has been in subcommittee sometimes for months before it is given to us. And most of the time on a subcommittee, there are at least 3 members of this group sitting up here that are on that subcommittee. So that's how we get the information. Besides the fact that many of the things on our agenda have backup pages, sometimes a couple hundred pages to back up just one item. So this is to give you just some backup information so you know how we're functioning as a board. This week we had the land bank meeting, and that was one of the big things we talked about were the Airbnbs, and we realized we need to focus on zoning for these, and also by having those in our community, it's interfering in our ability to have housing for the person who wants to come in our community and live permanently. So we're looking at how do we function with those in our community, and should we be zoning them for certain areas. So that obviously has now been placed to the zoning committee. At Municipal Operations Subcommittee, just lots of things were talked about, but one of the highlights I'm going to bring up because the others are going to be on our agendas. Joe Doran asked to organize Friends of Oakdale Community to help care for the cemetery. And as we all know, Joe always comes up with some stuff to help our community, so I want to thank Joe for doing that. And I think we might have, do we have some other subcommittee reports? Ann, do you have yours?
I do, thank you. On January 10th, the Public Safety Subcommittee met. Mayor Brink, Councilor Martell, and I were in attendance. City Manager Buck shared a photo montage, for lack of better description, of vehicles, trailers, basketball hoops, and dumpsters that were parked in the public right-of-way to share just a sense of the impact that that has on winter snow removal and also emergency vehicle access that and those issues that exist here in Sanford. And that does tie in a little bit to future agenda items. The police department also shared, and what took up the majority of our meeting, the 2022 calendar year statistics, and we heard from multiple staff from the department, which was actually really nice to see some new faces in the Zoom meeting. And some of the data included the following, and there's a lot of numbers here, so I apologize, but just to give you a sense and the community a sense of what our police department handled this past year. The ACO, our animal control officer, reported over 200 loose dog reports, many of them resulting in more serious issues such as dog fights, dogs getting hit by vehicles, etc. On a positive note, there was a 100% return rate on loose dogs, and our stray cat issues have declined this past year, so good news from that end. Our mental health unit reported over 1,000 calls to service this past year, including reports on homeless, 120 overdoses, 9 overdose deaths, and 45 cases of successful Narcan use. Our CID had over 600 calls, including 24 sexual assaults, 2 arsons, 1 homicide, and 1 manslaughter call. We also heard from all 3 of our patrols during the day. We have 3 major shifts, and again, it was really nice to hear from those folks. An overriding theme was that there are some challenges during all of our shifts at the police department with balancing supervision of staff and typical duties for those in charge of each patrol with administrative duties such as scheduling, detail management, vehicle maintenance, and so on. DC Small shared some overall department statistics, some of which included that there were 19,560 total calls to service this past calendar year, or about 53 on average per day. The traffic unit stops, we had 818 of them, with a total, with the traffic unit specifically, with a total of 2,914. And I just want to remind folks that our traffic unit didn't come into service until midway through the calendar year. So that was a real high priority, something we budgeted for, and I'm happy about that success. There were also suspicious activity calls, just under 1,000, arrest reports of 810, thefts at 591, domestic disturbances at 374. Again, just to give you a sense of the data with the police department. And the last thing that DC Small reported on was our current police department staffing. To give a sense to the community of the folks at our police department, the day shift has 10 patrol officers, evening shift has 7 with 1 spot unfilled, and the midnight shift has 4 with 2 spots that are currently unfilled. We have 12 support service members. It includes CID, Maine DEA, our SROs, traffic officer, and our mental health unit. We have leadership staff of 3 currently, with 1 open for next fiscal year. And we have 6 non-sworn staff, administrative staff, which includes our ACO, some clerical staff, and a social worker. And an important note for the council, we are projecting 7 retirements this upcoming year, in addition to the open spots we currently have. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other reports? Now for the city manager's report, Steve?
Yes, so as briefly as possible, I'd like to alert the community that there's ALICE training that's going to be continued this Thursday night, January 19th at 6 p.m. in the Sanford Performing Arts Center. It's been termed as a safety informational night for parents and concerned citizens that's being held at the Performing Arts Center. ALICE is an acronym that stands for Alert, Lockdown, Inform, Counter, Evacuate. It is the leader in nationally recognized training to counteract active shooter incidences in schools. We're all very familiar on November 15th of last year, an active shooter incident later determined to be a hoax greatly impacted the Sanford schools in our city. Public safety officials and school staff had been trained in the ALICE model for that response. The training worked well in response to the occurrence, with a noticeable deficiency being better informed parents and the need for training for any future occurrence. That is the purpose of the training that will come forward this coming Thursday evening. So I'd encourage anybody that has the ability to attend, and especially parents, to please attend that public informational training session. The next element is not specifically to city business, but for us, Dr. Shah is leaving the Maine CDC. I think many of us would agree that he was a much beloved individual in our lives for the period of about 2 years. So I know for Larissa and I and other department managers, Every Tuesday afternoon for a couple of years, we tuned into Dr. Shaw to see what his report was going to be on the status of what we needed to be doing as far as our COVID response, what's been working well, what's not been working well. And I want to poke fun at him just a little bit because we would use, our leading indicator would be when he would pop on the screen his curly hair, if it was in a major state of disarray, oh no, this week's report's not going to be good, or the presence of more than one Diet Coke can. So those were our indicators that we could count on Dr. Shaw. So it's been made known to us that he's leaving us to go to Washington, D.C. to become the second in command at the federal CDC. So that's pretty exciting stuff.
Yes.
So maybe we'll see him at the national level. We know him for being an exceptional communicator, and that's what we so appreciate. He felt that the information was trusted, he communicated it well, and we could rely on his information. He was also in Sanford several times throughout the pandemic as York County Emergency Management and our public safety responders were responsible for standing up what was the state's most successful and largest vaccination clinic. It just closed here at the end of December. So I'd like to commend all those individuals that initially were responsible for standing that up and work through that. So Dr. Shaw was here several times to look at that model and see to it that it could be propagated successfully statewide. We have another positive article coming on the RAISE grant. Many of us talked with, and I know Councilor Hanselman did as well, talked with Catherine Buxton, who will soon be releasing a new article on Sanford's obtainment of a RAISE grant. So having been interviewed and I've viewed the first draft, I note that the positive light of the article really sheds on the city's ability to plan, partner, and leverage resources towards accomplishing significant improvements to our streets. The article will be in the next issue of the Maine Trails, which is a bi-monthly publication of the Maine Better Transportation Association. So this would be our third time of being featured in that article. And again, it really shed light on the city's development of those working relationships to produce leveraged resources. So again, that's about a $35 million project for the city. So I'm just going to touch base very quickly, employment stats. So Stacey Howes, our HR director, sent out to me again today, well, to all employees, just some employment stats to give you a better understanding of where the city is at as far as our employees are concerned. So there's the notification in here of 7 new hires and 3 reassignments. We have Michael Greenier, a new police officer, came on board on November 14th. Also in November, Lauren O'Neill came on board as a dispatcher. Richard Southwick came on December 5th as an on-call snowplow operator. Keith Tolman, an equipment operator 1 in the Highway Department, December 7th. December 19th, Daniel Chenard, a new police officer. Councilor Tranchmontaine came on January 1st. Thank you, Councilor. Albert Phillips, who was a longtime employee as a custodian in the facilities, retired, but he's back as an on-call employee for us to fill in some of the voids that only Al can fill. And he's our technical advisor on all things geothermal in the police department, amongst others. We may need a laser-guided mower to get him to get anybody to mow a lawn the way Al used to, but thank you, Al. Jeremy Clark came on board January 8th as a new dispatcher. Longtime Deputy Chief Timothy Strout retired as a uniformed police officer. He's taken a civilian position. It's entitled the Professional Development and Property Manager within the police department. He is going to be completing the MLEAP certification for our police department. So we aspire that in the next number of months we will be an accredited department under the Maine Law Enforcement Accreditation Program. Will gain us significant recognition, save us on insurances. And should anything go awry there going forward, such as somebody decides to sue us and such under that, we will have much better protections in place because of the significant amount of training that's already incurred, plus the maintenance of that training going forward. Matthew Gagne is an acting major of support and logistics. It's a position that's been authorized by the council, but the pay scale has not yet been assigned, so he's in an acting position until that is finalized. Then we have on consideration for the council here this evening We have currently, well, Assistant Chief Richard Smith is here to be appointed as acting chief. Thank you very much, Richard, for that action. And I am seeking the council's support in that as well. Other positions that are currently advertised and pending interviews, we have multiple dispatchers, multiple police officers, as indicated. 7 positions are due to retire. We're still trying to fill the voids before those retirements even take place. We have an on-call snowplow operator at the airport. Fire chief position is still open, and we're still looking for the full-time custodian was just filled, so that's on the list, but it was just filled, unless something happened today that I'm not aware of. Thank you very much. Current open positions also that we're being seeking in the near future: certified police officers, non-certified police officers, firefighters, both EMT, advanced EMT and paramedic, certified and non-certified dispatchers, reserve dispatchers, equipment operator 1s in the Highway Public Works Department, and we're looking for 2 split positions: equipment operator 1 to be shared between highway and airport, 1 to be shared between highway and parks, so moving them seasonally. Looking for a full-time tractor-trailer driver at the transfer station. We're looking for an equipment operator 4 in the highway department. We're looking for a mechanics position, but I believe we have an interview pending for that this week or next. Just learned of that today. A winter seasonal laborer in the Public Works Department, an on-call snowplow operator in the Public Works Department. They are still significantly understaffed, but I want to commend that department for the exceptional response they've had to all of our storms this year. They're covering the routes, they're getting the work done, and they're doing it exceptionally well. We're still advertising for a planner position. We have interviews tomorrow on that, so we're crossing our fingers. We have high hopes for that. And we're looking for reserve crossing guards. So future positions that are not yet advertised because they've been authorized but have not yet been advertised is a city engineer. That's the construction position that will be fulfilled for this coming construction season. It was just made known to us the middle of last week that our shared assessor position between the city and Old Orchard Beach, that individual is going to retire much sooner than anticipated and leave that position. So the city is going to be looking for an assessing position to fill that void. And we're still looking for a part-time custodian, trying to solve the custodial positions at the Memorial Gym to take care of that. So all of these positions are posted on the city's website. Please go to our website, look under departments, human resources, and all of the employment opportunities are so posted there. Thank you.
Thank you guys for all the reports. And Steve, you did a great job at advertising our community and all the positions that we need. And to let people know out there, this is a fantastic place to work. We're fun people. So if you really want a place to come to, Sanford is the place to be. On next to communications and presentations, 2317-01, presentation to the City Council, the fiscal year 2021-2022 audit from Christian Smith, CPA, CFE, partner with, and I'll slaughter this name, Whipfly. See, I told you I'd ruin it. 20 Longcrete Drive, Portland, South Portland. Thank you.
All right, thank you for having me. I hope to give you a high-level overview of the audit, which we've issued the audit report, and hopefully you've had some time to look at that, and if you have specific questions, I'll try to answer those here tonight. I always like to start off with just explaining what the relationship is with the auditors. We are independent auditors. We work for the City Council. We do work directly with management to perform the financial statement audit, and you've hired us to express an opinion on the financial statements, which are the responsibility of management. The result of our audit is what we call an unmodified or a clean opinion, which means the financial statements are fairly stated and presented in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. So if you're following along, the opinion is on page 1 of the financial statements. This is just a list of the different reports that we do issue. So we do issue a separate set of financial statements for the city, which includes the school as a department, but we also issue a standalone school department set of financial statements as well. We also issue separate management letters for both the city and school, which I'll cover the results of those. We also issue what we call a required communications letter, which basically tells you the ins and outs of how the audit went and if there were any issues. We also do a separate audit. It's called the single audit report and data collection form, and so that's where we do a separate compliance audit of the city and school departments' compliance with federal grant regulations. We also are required to submit a report to the State of Maine Department of Audit as to how the audit went. We also have to issue a separate report that reconciles the school department's financial statements to what they upload to the State of Maine Department of Education. And then we also have to issue a report to the Department of Education about the school department's compliance with the Maine School Finance Act. So I'll have a little more specific details on this slide, but to sum it up overall, there really were no findings, no issues. Everything is very good. It was a good, clean audit. We do sometimes have recommendations as part of our audit, and we issue those in the management letter. So happy to report that there are no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies reported. Those would be comments that are of a fairly severe, significant nature and would indicate that there's a significant weakness in internal control that could lead to inaccurate financial reporting. So there were no comments of that at that level. There were no best practices recommendations for the city. We did have 2 best practices recommendations, 2 comments for the school department, which we've provided to them in a separate letter. One was regarding just continued monitoring of their grant billing practices, and the second comment was about implementing a 90-day password change requirement for IT security. So they've accepted both of those comments, and I believe they have plans to address those in the coming year. This next bullet here just kind of covers what we call the required communications letter. So that's where we're basically telling you there were no changes in accounting principles or practices. There were no difficulties in performing the audit. There were no disagreements with management, and there were no audit adjustments. So that's also speaks very highly of both the finance department here at the city as well as the school department to say, hey, we went through our audits, we checked all the balances, we did our procedures, and didn't find any errors or any mistakes in the accounting. So that's very commendable, both departments. And then just with respect to the federal grant audit, the single audit which I mentioned, typically we only have to test one grant when we do the audit of the city and school department. However, there's been significant COVID money received the last couple of years, and the ESSER grant, which is a school funding grant, was $4 or $5 million or so, as well as the school nutrition program, which was $2 million. So we tested 2 grants this year, both related to the school department. There were no findings, no issues with that compliance audit either. Any questions before I move on? I don't have a whole lot more to go over, but
You tested those 2 grants, but I do know that a lot of times the school sometimes will have a problem because of special ed reporting and getting those reports into the state to get refunds for that. Was that okay also?
Yes, that was okay this year. That was an issue in the prior year.
Right.
More so, they've caught up on grant billing this year with all the grants to where they need to be. The only exception was the ESSER program, which was delayed because of problems with the state system that prevented us from being able to bill timely. But that is all working well now.
Thank you.
Yes. Yep. So just some financial statement highlights. There are 3 different sets of accounting that's required by the financial statements. So we look at it a couple different ways. On an accrual basis, your assets exceed liabilities by $60.8 million, and so that's taking into account your buildings minus your liability, your buildings, cash, other assets minus any liabilities you have on the books, including pension and pension obligations and post-retirement health care and those kind of things that are required to be estimated. But as a city government, you're more focused on fund accounting and fund financial statements. So the more important metric probably is that the general fund balance is $16.5 million, and then that number includes city and school. It's an increase of $2 million over the prior year. The school accounted for about $600,000 of that increase, and the City was about 1.4 million of that increase. So there's really two components to the increase if you're looking at it. On the budget to actual side, there were positive variances in revenues and expenditures of about 5.6 million. That was both on the revenue and the expenditure side. On the revenue side, state revenue sharing was up almost $1 million compared to budget, and so that's, the city received those funds. On the expenditure side, there were favorable results compared to budget for most departments, general government, public works, education, as well as capital improvement. So you have a fairly significant capital improvement fund that you carry over from year to year. There's about $3.3 million of carryover into next year. That'll go into next year's budget. But you do achieve a favorable budget to actual result each year. You had planned to use about $920,000 of your fund balance. So basically, where your expenditures would exceed the revenues, the actual results is that your revenues exceeded expenditures by 1.7 million, and so it's the combination of these things that result in your $2 million increase in overall fund balance. And that can be found on page 16 of your financial statements if you do want to go back to it later. There are other governmental funds reported in these financial statements. You do have quite a lot of activity in special revenue funds with different projects, different grant funds, capital projects funds as well. Your other governmental funds total about $11 million, decreased in total $830,000, mostly as a result of two offsetting things. Your special revenue funds were up about $2.7 million. Most of that had to do with your American Rescue Plan Act funds, which were received towards the end of the year. There was about $2.2 million of that remaining unspent that was received. And that's offset by your capital project spending. So your capital projects spending, roughly $3.6 million. Most of that has to do with ongoing school construction-related projects. So the net of those two was an $830,000 decrease in the other governmental funds. Another important metric to understand is your cash. You have a total of 31 million of cash in the banks. It's about a $2 million decrease over the prior year, which I kind of see that as just an ordinary change in your cash position related to normal activity. All your cash is fully collateralized and fully insured against custodial credit risk. So if there's a problem with the banking system, you're fully covered. I just have 3 more slides to show. If there's any questions, I could pause. So this kind of just shows you what the fund balance trend has been for the last 3 years. And so this is the city and school combined. And you'll see I've got kind of 3 key categories here. Committed is about $4.3 million. So that's money you've set aside for special projects. And the school department has set aside about $1.9 million or so of money for special projects as well. Your assigned fund balance of about $2 million. Most of that is related to your assignment of fund balance, your planned utilization of fund balance to make the budget balance in the current year we're in. And then there's the unassigned fund balance. You'll see that's grown to about $10 million as of the end of the year. So that represents about 11% of your total annual budget, which is a good place to be in. I know as a rule of thumb, the bond rating agencies like to see at least 1 month's fund balance and unassigned, so that would be 8%. I've always heard that they don't really like to see more than 2 months, which would be 16%, so you're really kind of in the middle at 11% of unassigned fund balance at that $10 million mark. The slide just kind of breaks it out and shows you separately. This is just the city, and this is total fund balance. So your total, as I said before, the total fund balance for the city and school is about $16.5 million. If you back out the school's fund balance of about $4.2 million, that gets you to the $12 million total City of Sanford fund balance. And the next slide just covers the school department as a standalone. So as I said, $4.2 million of school department total general fund balance. They have about $2.3 million of unassigned fund balance, which is less than 5% of their annual budget. Also, kind of a benchmark of where they need to be as well. The state of Maine allows them to carry over up to 5%, and I think the actual percentage they're at is 4%. So they're in a good spot as well. So overall, based on the information I've seen and I've covered here, I would definitely say that the financial health of the city is very good, and certainly the finance operations are working effectively. Everything is very good. There's nothing new to report this year or next year, as far as I know. So I can entertain any additional questions.
Any questions? So that means we get an A+?
A+, absolutely.
Thank you. Old teacher. Steve, do you have a question?
So Christian, one of the things that you did note in here graphically for us this year was debt service. So I know a municipality can bond up to 15% of its total capacity. We're currently at 2.25%. Just a general statement as to how that compares to similar communities.
Right. I think if we were to look at your total debt service, it is, I'd say, comparable to other communities. Let's see, I think your total, of similar size, I can think of other communities that are about the same annual budget and have, over $100 million in annual debt service. I'm sorry, not annual debt service, total debt service. Your total bonds are about $139 million, which is well within the threshold as you just stated. But the other thing that's really important to understand here is that your school projects, your school bonds are covered significantly by the state. 90% or more of them are covered. 90% or more of the cost is covered by state funding. So when you look at this and compare this to other communities, I would say that your debt service position is significantly better than a lot of other communities because of the state share of the debt service.
Thank you.
The deputy mayor made me feel bad for not asking a question. And I don't know if I was pausing only because I'm not sure if it's a fair question to ask. But in past years, I believe you or a peer from your firm has presented fund balance in our community compared to other similar communities. And that wasn't, I don't think, in this package. I'm just curious in general if you're seeing a similar increase over the last 3 years in fund balance with other municipalities across the state, or if you can comment on that.
Right, yeah, definitely have seen it, especially with the school. If you have a school department or if it's an independent school district, their fund balances have been going up and up just based on the, cost savings from operations as well as additional grant funding as well. But yes, also on the municipal side as well, fund balances have stayed steady or increasing as well, mostly due to, there's still, tax revenues are still pretty strong, and excise tax revenues are still pretty strong as well, and then the additional funding this year from I think I said it was the not the homestead exemption, the is that state assistance? I forgot now. Oh, a lot of communities got additional funds this year for state revenue sharing, and that helped as well. So yes, but that may just be a one-time thing.
Any other comments, questions? All right, thank you. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Moving on to public participation, and to explain that, for people who are here or on TV, what we have is a table up front that you come in, and if you have something that you want to share with us, you sign in, and then Steve goes over and gets the piece of paper and brings it to me, and then we read the person's name, and you come up front and you share with us. And then there's a way for people online to also share. And there are no comments. But if you want to come, we do like to hear from the public, so please feel free to come and share with us. To let you know, as a council, we cannot comment on what you are reporting out, but we do take notes so that we can put that on a further agenda or do some research about that. I think we've got one. Diane Conley? Can we hear
Yes,
from her?
Madam Mayor, this is Diane Conley from Springville.
Yes.
Sorry, no computer for pictures, sorry. In the last, I'm going to say 3-4 months, Infinity has been hooking up lines within the city. It's what they're leaving behind that has me concerned. It's a white type of plastic, hard plastic. And it's been dropped and left on people's lawns in the right of way. And if animals or children picked this up and ingested it, I'd have a heart attack. I have pieces of this that have been left on my street and other streets. And I'm going to come and bring it down to the city manager so he can determine what this substance is. As far as I know, it looks like plastic. But I don't think it should be littered from the poles or whatever they're doing on the poles all over the city. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Diane. I appreciate your comments. All right, moving on to public hearings are now open. The City Council will take public comments on the following. 21304-01, public hearing on the proposed ordinance prohibiting commercial vehicles, tractors, trailers, boats, campers, recreation vehicles, and all-terrain vehicles, snowmobiles, and unregistered vehicles from parking all night on public ways. Already did. Yes. All right. Any questions from the councilors?
Yeah, on the commercial truck drivers, I don't want to come across as Sanford is unfriendly and they have nowheres to park. How feasible is it to have a permit to where they park through the police station? Is there a procedure for that?
I'll pass that on to Steve.
Okay.
Yeah, so they would, for those occurrences, hopefully it's on a non-reoccurring basis, they could contact the police department. Police department can issue them a permit so they can park there on a temporary basis. Excuse me. One of the difficulties we've seen is that commercial vehicles, and we've defined this more appropriately in this last draft of the ordinance, by their commercial classification and weight being over 10,000, having a gross combined weight rating of 26,001 or more pounds, inclusive of a towed unit or units with a gross weight rating of more than 10,000 pounds. So that gets into the CDLB categorization. So we've had occurrences on a regular basis in the community, tractor trailers with the trailer parked on side streets, impairing the street, blocking people's viewpoints from the residents and such, idling the vehicles all night long in a residential neighborhood and such under that. So if somebody's doing repair work to your property, they need to leave an equipment trailer there for your contractor and such, they can get a permit from the police department and they'll be allowed to park that unit there. I have noticed in my own neighborhood, there's a person that obviously is staying in an apartment that's driving a commercial tractor trailer, brings that home each night, absent the box, and is struggling to find some place to park that. But on the city streets, in that very dense neighborhood is not the place for that to be happening. So, but again, they can contact the police department, they can give them a permit so they won't be ticketed or towed for those occurrences that they need to park on the city streets.
And just for clarification, that is for like a commercial truck driver that's never been here before, they're early, and they pull into Sanford, they have a place to call and park before they go and drop their load off if they're a couple hours early and they want to catch a nap. That's my only thinking where we're friendly to the American truck drivers because they're the heartbeat of America, and I don't want to limit them.
Well, this is for overnight parking, so that wouldn't be an instance, during the day hours if they're trying to catch a couple of Z's, or if they're for a short period of time. This is for the overnight duration of parking.
Right, the regular guys that are coming in and using the streets. Okay, thank you.
Yep. So, thinking on this, that's not an occurrence that's been brought up as something that's raised an issue or a concern in the past. So I'm not thinking that it's going to be a concern going forward, but if it is, I could bring that back. Yeah.
And questions from the public? And Diane Conley? Diane, can you hear us?
Madam Mayor, one of the things I looked up when I looked at this ordinance is the first thing I did is I went to the Department of Public Works and I looked up their right-of-way definition, and it wasn't defined. Over the years, I've asked several people in several departments, what is defined as the right-of-way? What is the measurement? What is it measured from? And I get 3 different answers from 3 different people. Can that also be put in the ordinance to define exactly what the right-of-way is? Because I'm thinking that if you do that, people might probably get the trailers and everything off of where they're not supposed to have them parked. Thank you.
Thank you.
So the width of right-of-way is that parcel of land that's owned by the city for any particular street. So I can go to our Public Works Department, and they have in there the listed width of right-of-way for all of our streets. You can go back into the city records. The city clerk's office maintains our card file, because this goes back into the 1800s and or earlier. So each time that in the past, the town council at the town meetings would accept a public way, part of the plat plan that was out there at that point in time, they would accept the length and width of that public way. That becomes part of the plat plan. That's expressed in our GIS system for all of our tax mapping purposes. So you can simply go on there and you can click and you can measure those width of right-of-ways because it's mapped out there. We maintain a record of those. Each time the city is taking on the next street project and such, we go out to reaffirm our established width of right-of-way so that our work is coinciding inside of that width of right-of-way. If we have to go off that width in order to, tie a driveway in or do a drainage improvement or such, we'll get a temporary construction easement, or if we need to make a permanent impact, we will provide the funds to address that permanent impact and establish a permanent easement. So those are well-defined. I don't know why you'd have varying opinions on 3 different definitions and such, but it's a well-established mechanism that we have on file here at the city offices.
Thank you, Steve. Any other questions? Public hearing is closed. Now for old business, 22505-01, order to extend the continuation of the dangerous building hearing regarding 11 Kimball Street for administrative review of the notice of violation to February 21, 2023, pending re-inspection and pending a compliance plan. Steve, somebody reporting out on this?
Yes, Director Houseel is reporting out on this.
I'm here. So we had a hearing a month ago, 2 months ago, and we've been working through the administrative remedies of this hearing. So if you remember, there were 5 of 8 units vacated. We continued the hearing to a later date. We've been seeing that progress is being made in the act of finalizing a notice of violation, and we're trying to sort out a compliance plan and exhaust administrative remedies to do so. And so what this is doing is putting this hearing off again until February, and at that time we can, or you can choose to have that hearing if we're not seeing compliance, or it can be moved on to a later date again. To actually hold the hearing will require notice, and so that is notice of the hearing to the owner, as well as recording notice of that hearing in the Registry of Deeds.
Just in case Pete was wondering, because this was something we took before you came on board, we'd already had a hearing on this. This was supposed to be the follow-up hearing, and now because they might have everything put into place or we have to reevaluate, we're extending this to February 21. So it will come before us again at that time. Okay. All right. Any comments? Deputy Mayor Herlihy?
I'll make the motion to extend the dangerous building hearing for 11 Kimball Street until February 21st, 2023, pending reinspection and pending a compliance.
And the second, Councilor Hanselman?
I'll second that.
All those in favor? Thank you, 100%. New business, 2332-01, in order to approve appointment of the acting fire chief of the Sanford Fire Department pursuant to Charter, Section 402.3. Steve?
Yes, so we're currently still in search of our permanent replacement as our next fire chief, Chief Benatti. After doing 10-plus dedicated years of service to the city, retired effective last Thursday on January 12th. So pursuant to the fact that we cannot operate without a fire chief, pursuant to state law, that's listed in Title 38, Section 3153, requires that a fire chief be appointed. I then took into consideration the qualifications of both of our currently serving assistant chiefs. In looking through those resumes, I identified that our Assistant Chief Richard Smith, who is here with us this evening, possesses the requisite qualifications, both from an educational certifications. I also consider the years of experience in and outside of the department. A.C. Smith, now Assistant Chief Smith, Acting Chief Smith, has had, I believe, 17 years in the department, 7 of which are 13 years within the department, 7 of which serving as a lieutenant in the department. And he has also served as a fire chief in an adjoining community, performing all of the functions of a chief in that regard. So taking all of those considerations under acknowledgement, I have appointed him as acting chief, and I'm asking for the city council to so affirm pursuant to the city charter.
A.C. Smith, do you have another relative here?
I do. My father is present.
I think he needs to come up and stand with you.
I didn't prep him for that, and I didn't invite him either. He showed up.
I know, that's the advantage of being mayor.
He still keeps tabs on me, too. So.
I brought my school badge just in case.
Oh, perfect,
Another
perfect.
city employee.
Do we have a motion to approve A.C. Rick Smith as acting fire chief pursuant to Charter Section 402-3?
Yes, a motion.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you very much. All those in favor? Oh, do you have a comment? Sorry. Hold on, the all favor. We have a comment.
No, I just wanted to make a brief comment that I think I speak for all of us, and we say we appreciate your being willing to take on this role for our community, so thank you.
Of course.
That was it.
Like the manager said,
Perfect,
I've been a
perfect.
Good luck.
city employee since 2009, and have jumped at every opportunity I have to step up and serve the town and now the city, and I look forward to continuing to do so. Thank you.
Now, all those in favor? Thank you very much. And you can
you.
pay me later for embarrassing your dad.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
And now, 2334-01, in order to approve a letter of support as needed for the Sanford Water District, requesting to the Maine Public Utilities Commission for a waiver for requirements under Charter 69, determination of fire protection revenues for water utilities and authorization, a letter of support. And who is reporting?
So I can start with a comment. I want to thank David Parent as the director of the Water District. It's on his working relationship with the Public Utilities Commission that we even are potentially being afforded this opportunity to buffer this fiscal impact. As far as
The guy who's going to increase our rates?
well, but this isn't his fault, so. Right, so, so the utilities district is having a rate increase this year, but aside from that, the city currently pays at a rate of 22%. And I'm going to pause and let Dave explain all of this for us, but As a manager, I have a longstanding concern on how they derive the fire protection fees, and is it appropriate and such into that. I have a concern that the PUC should revisit this topic since it's fairly old and hasn't been looked at extensively for quite a period of time. But all of that being out of our control, what Dave is proposing is to send a communication to the PUC, and he's also talked to the public advocate on this topic as well, whereby the city would be able to ramp into at 1% per year, ramp from the 22 to the 25, which I greatly appreciate, because if we had to absorb all of this in this single year, it would be extremely difficult for us to do that. So that being said, I'm going to pause and turn it over to you, Dave.
Sure. So that was a good overview of it. Very good. So we are going to have to do a rate increase this year. Our power rates, electricity went up. We're in the same pool with the city. We group our loads together so we can get a more attractive contract. We went from paying 6.3 cents per kilowatt hour up to over 16 cents. So do the percentage on that.
61%.
More than that, I think, isn't it? 6.3 cents to 16 cents?
Yeah, 61%.
That's over 200%.
Well, I'm looking at what it does to us overall.
Oh, okay.
But, yeah.
That was it.
Yeah.
That, our chemical costs did a similar thing for a similar reason. So we are going to do a rate increase. But what always scares me when these rate increases come around are the public fire protection fees. And the reason for that is Sanford has lost a lot of its industrial base over the years. When I came here, we were pumping around 2.7 million gallons a day, peaking out at about 4.5 million gallons a day. And we continued to do that right up through about 2008, 2010, and that's when the city started losing some of this industrial usage. Today, we're down to about 1.6 million gallons a day, and we peak at maybe 2.3, 2.5. So that's quite a drop. So back to the discussion on public fire protection fees. There is a rule, PUC rule in Maine, Chapter 69. It has a formula in it that they put in that rule when they wrote it in 1987. They haven't changed it since. The rule is actually based on philosophies from a paper that was written in the early 60s, I believe. So it goes back a long ways. The reason they haven't opened it up is it's always a huge fight whenever they do, and they don't want to go there. But it is antiquated, and what the basis of it is most public water utilities, Sanford included, run and maintain a robust fire protection system that, oh, by the way, we're able to sell some water out of to subsidize it. But the tanks you see, the large water mains, the fire hydrants, that's all for fire protection. That's so the city doesn't burn down again. A lot of those initial improvements started around the turn of the century when both Sanford and Springville downtowns and mills burnt down. They didn't want it happening again. So the PUC looks at that and says, well, the municipalities need to be paying their fair share of public fire protection. So they came up with this formula, and the more water that you sell, that you produce, the more they figure your operation is about selling water, and the less it's about public fire protection. The less water you sell, the more they figure you're doing for public fire protection. So for many, many years, Sanford fell between the 20 and 22% range on the percent of our total revenue requirement that we have on file with PUC that has to be provided. Because we have lost that water consumption, that industrial base, which was huge for us, and that has had other impacts to both of us on both sides. You've lost tax base, we've lost consumption. In that formula, it really impacts the percentage. That formula tops out at at 30%. They won't let you go higher than that. If I run the numbers, Sanford's supposed to be paying over 27%. Last rate increase I completely ignored the rule, told PUC I was ignoring it because I thought some of the consumption might come back. They let it slide. This time they're not letting it slide.
That strategy did work well, though.
It worked very well. That was even worse than what I'm doing now. So I've been talking to them over a year now, knowing this day would come. And what they have come to is they've said, okay, apply for a waiver. They're on board. They kind of get it. And so I had it worked out with the PUC, but then we have this other office called the Office of the Public Advocate. And they advocate for the public water user, not for municipalities. They could care less what Sanford's tax rate is. They could care less what the impacts the taxpayers are, because they don't understand they're the same people, I guess. So they got involved recently, so I had to go through the whole ordeal again with them, and I think we're back on track. So what they won't do is allow us to just ignore the rule anymore. What they may allow us to do, and I think will allow us to do, is to phase it in over 5 years, 1% a year. And it's 1% of our revenue requirement. Your fee isn't going to go up 1% a year. It's going to go up probably 4 or 5%. And if we have a rate case in the interim, it's going to be that percentage of our total revenue requirement. It's not a set amount for the next 5 years, unfortunately. But at least this will allow Steve to budget it in a way that's a little more predictable, rather than getting a $250,000 hit in 1 year, which is what would have happened. So it may just slide through. We may get very little discussion at the commission. We may have somebody come on as what's called an intervener and fight this because they think the city should be paying more. If that happens, I want Steve to have the ability to fairly quickly write a letter in support, and we may have to drive up there, I hope not, and talk to the commission. I think we'll be all right. I have PUC, the Public Utilities Commission staff is on board with this. So we should be okay. But it's a political process. You never know.
Do you have any, excuse me, Dave, do you have impressions from the Public Advocate's office, the communications that went out over the last day or two as to positive view?
They have not replied from the latest email, but the last meeting I had with them was very positive in the end. They're used to dealing with power companies and private water utilities. They very rarely deal with public utilities. And after explaining not only our situation, but how things work with a consumer-owned utility like us, they seem okay with it. It comes out of the same pockets. It honestly does. So whether we raise the water rates so that somebody's going to have a higher bill, or you raise the taxes so they have a higher tax bill, and either one of those comes whether you're a property owner or not, because it's in your rent if you're not. It's coming out of the same pockets. It really is. So why would you want to do this huge shift in 1 year that you're not going to want to just raise taxes to cover, so you're going to end up impacting services? There's really no need of it. And I think they got it, I hope.
So you said we're off about 600,000 gallons a day for the
No, from 2.7 million down to 1.6, so over 1 million. Well, Cyro, I keep calling them Cyro. What are they now? Lonic, and then there's something else. Yeah. So when they made their raw product in Sanford, they had a coolant stream going into their reactor that ran over 300 gallons a minute all day long, 24 hours a day, every day of the year. So we sent them a big bill every month. It was nice. Sprague wasn't that big of a user, Vichy, but they were a significant user as well. Goodall Hospital in its heyday used a lot more water than they do now, and every single residential user who has replaced their fixtures has gone from 5-gallon flush toilets to 1.7 and 1.6 gallon flush toilets, and to low flow fixtures. So everybody's using less. It's the way of the future, and it's good. It's conservation.
So I was trying to do the math here on what we'd need to do for economic development to replace that. So let's just say the craft beer industry uses about 7 gallons per 1 gallon of beer produced. So we've got to have enough production. We've got to have 143,000 gallons of beer produced daily to make up for that difference.
Yeah, and you could only cover half of that yourself.
So that throws it all off, right? So, yeah.
Can we have a motion to approve? Ann?
Madam Mayor, I would like to make a motion to approve the letter of
Second.
support.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Good, no, I got it. Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Good, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your report, and the humor.
Especially when you're billing us.
I'm trying to think of that much beer. Okay, 2325-01, in order to approve the purchase of a 2014 Vector Jetter, if I get this right, truck from the Sanford Sewer District in the amount of $175,000 for the routine use by the Department of Public Works. Steve, who is reporting out on this? Oh, there's Matt. I see him now.
We have Director Hill is going to report out on this. I think this is another example of working well with the other quasi-municipal district, the Sanford Sewers District. I'm going to let Matt present on the truck and what that means for the city. So, Matt?
Thank you. Yes, so we were approached by the Sanford Sewage District, who is buying a new Vector Jetter truck for their fleet in order to maintain their structures, and they have this one available for resale. The last one they sold, we did not buy, and it went to the electric light company, who used it for another, I think, 9 years, their last one for 9 years for vacuum excavation. Notably, they used it 3 or 4 years ago for the foundation excavations for these traffic signals at the intersection of Main Street and Old Mill Road. So the truck is low mileage, it's low hours. It is 9 years old, but it does have a lot of good life left on it. The Public Works Department strives to complete routine maintenance operations for the city. Part of that is cleaning out ditches and culverts and closed drainage systems. And currently, or really historically, we've never had the ability to jet out culverts or closed drainage systems. We have worked in concert on an emergency basis with the sewer department, but we've never really had our own. So when this unit became available, Deputy Director Pete Smith jumped right on it, that this is something that we needed for our fleet in order to do our due diligence jobs and perform this routine maintenance. So we had the truck over to the highway garage to give it a once over, and we got it inspected by our mechanics and found that it is in very good shape, and went back to them and just discussed a few things that we did find, and they're actually going to be working on them and potentially turning over a very nice unit. City Manager Buck did provide a little bit of background on comparable trucks for sale in the United States, and it's a very well-priced unit. So our intent is to get this vehicle into our fleet, and then, as was previously mentioned in the meeting, get staffed up so they can start running it routinely. We do have a street sweeper that is capable of sucking out a catch basin, cleaning out a catch basin. But to give you a frame of reference, if that catch basin is full of sediment, our truck has such low volume. It's primarily a sweeper truck, but it's such low capacity on the vacuum side that we have to take the entire contents of that catch basin back to the Public Works Department and then come back and continue working. This truck has a much larger capacity. It's capable of sucking out several full catch basins before needing to go back to the Public Works Department. And our intent would be to try to get it on the road every day of the summer, as was previously done with our previous unit, the VACOL, before that one got cost prohibitive in order to run and maintain.
Yes, I'd like to also add to the presentation. So this is part of the fleet management program that was reviewed with the property management subcommittee. In the fleet management program, one of the top 3 priorities was this Jetterback truck. They had both a new price and a used price acquisition in there. This fits in the used price acquisition portion of that fleet management program. The requisite inspections have been done. So I therefore would support this wholeheartedly as recommended by our Public Works Director.
Thank you. Fleet management is one of Deputy Mayor Herlihy's passions. So I imagine you want to make the motion to approve before we discuss.
I think she knows I'm bored by the discussions. I'll make a motion to approve the purchase of the truck from the Sanford Sewage District.
Could we have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you very much. And any discussion? Yes, go ahead. Council Martell?
Thank you. I think you touched on this a little bit, but so this is a 2013 according to the...
14.
Is it a 14? All right, well, one of these documents says 13. So I guess my concern was that this may be getting close to its useful life because it says 12 to 15 years.
This came up at a subcommittee meeting, and it's the number of hours that are on it. And if I remember correctly, Steve, this was not used very much, considering like the life expectancy of this.
Yes, I don't have, I can pull that information back up yet, but the mileage is 25,000 miles on it.
Yep.
It's a Cummins. I'm a
Okay.
Cummins fan, wholeheartedly. They're more expensive to repair, but they don't need to be repaired, so there's that. You can rebuild cats all day long. But it's a Cummins. The chassis itself, if you strip the equipment off this, the chassis is worth almost this amount of money. So it's been a well-maintained unit. Some of the small, shall I say, repairs that are necessary to put this into tip-top shape are going to be done by the department. You know, the major drive belt, they've already ordered that.
Okay.
They're giving us additional implements to go with that as far as the vacuum tools are concerned and such under that. So they're really serving us well, and it keeps this truck inside of the district as well. So they've backed us up for years. We can do the same for them at this point in time. Other elements, let's see, I'm trying to think the operational hours on that. Oh, gosh.
1,921.
Yeah, so when I was looking out there for comparable trucks, nationwide search, can't find anything of that low number of hours on it in this year. The 2 units that I did find are in California, so it's just not cost effective to go
Yeah,
there.
I just wanted to make sure that, you know, we were pretty happy with its current condition, given how much use we plan on getting out of it and some lifespan left.
Yep.
Sounds like that's
That's also a very fair question, Councilor Martell, is when you discuss like parts availability. One of the largest challenges we're having in our garage right now is the availability of those parts in order to effect the repairs. It's a constant challenge that our department's dealing with on a daily basis. So, yeah, that's certainly factored into our decision.
Okay, thank you, appreciate it.
Any other questions? I like the fact you guys seem to know what you're talking about. I couldn't have asked a single question on that, so excellent. All those in favor? All 6. Thank you. Moving on, 2314-01, order to approve a contract with Bill Garish of Northeast Civil Solutions to perform an independent fee estimate for the engineering contract of the East Apron Seal Coat project at the Sanford Seacoast Regional Airport. Ooh, a tongue twister. In the amount of $2,000. And I am assuming, Allison, you are reporting out? Is that why you're up here? Okay, go ahead.
Good evening, I'm Allison Navia. I'm the manager of our Sanford Seacoast Regional Airport. This project, this is the first small piece of a bigger project. So whenever we do these airport improvement projects that involve federal money, there's a process very similar to our own purchasing policy that has to take place, and this independent fee estimate is part of that process. So in order to hire the consulting firm that's going to do the bid specs and all of the design of the project and the overview of the project itself, the administration of the grant and all of those types of things, we need to get an independent fee estimate that allows us to negotiate the cost of that project. So when you look through the backup for this particular item, you'll see that blank spreadsheet in there. It has all of the tasks and all of the disciplines how much each one of those costs, and then this independent fee estimator will go through there with our scope of work and give us an estimate, independent of the consulting firm, on what they think it should cost for us to contract with them. So the federal requirement is that I then use that to negotiate to be within 10% of whatever the estimate was, and then we use that contract price and the estimate that we get from a contractor to do the work, and that's what we use to submit for the application to then get the money and then go forward and do the project. So if you zoom out on the entire project as a whole, this is part of our CIP proposal for this budget, and that's the proposed project sheet that you see there. The total cost of the project is about $191,000 to do this 34,000 square yards of seal coating to preserve the pavement investment that we already made over at the airport. This has 95% funding, so 90% comes from FAA and 5% comes from DOT. So for less than $10,000, we're getting a major protection of our pavement investment over there to keep the longevity of that. That pavement area, that's basically the big parking lot for all the aircraft where you see all the jets parked in the summer. So it's a big revenue producer for us as well. So we want to preserve that pavement as long as possible. So this is the little tiny step one, and you'll see many more things that'll come before you for approval of the contract and then eventually acceptance of the grant offer from FAA.
Thank you. A motion to approve? Martell?
Motion to
Councilor Martell?
accept?
Second? Council Hanselman?
I'll second that.
And any discussion? I'll get the hang of this after a while. Any discussion? Nope. All those in favor? Thank you very much. Don't go away. I think you're up next, too.
Could you please pass on to Bill? I can't believe he's still around, right?
I'll tell him you said hi.
He's been in the aviation game a long time. Long time.
19709-01, in order to review and approve the amended change for the Airport Advisory Committee, and Allison is reporting out again. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the motion to approve in a second, and then we'll go to discussion. Or do you have to make your thing first?
No.
Okay,
Oh, well, I'm going to make an amendment to it, but it's more of a repair.
okay.
So
Well,
I'll
how
make-
about we do the repair first, so we'll know what
Okay,
we're
so
talking
it's
about.
a repair. The very last thing, Allison, is it should say all committee appointments and removals are subject to city council approval. Do you see that? It's just a slight, I can see why she would put and removal, because it kind of goes with approval and removal. It sounds,
It
should go.
Yeah,
But yeah.
could create a
So
song
that's the
around
only
it.
adjustment, just to make sure.
Okay, so now I need a motion for.
I'll make a motion that we approve the Airport Advisory Committee charge changes as written with that slight amendment.
And a second? Council Trench-Montagne?
And do you want
And
to go
I'll-
through the changes, or?
No.
No? Okay.
Any discussion?
Yeah, it's pretty basic. I mean, we're looking at just, clarifying some of the membership, and a little bit of the charge, and we're putting in an attendance policy, which she's the first one to be looking at, but we are looking at it for
The
some
Trails
others.
is doing one, too.
Yeah, we're doing some
Yeah.
others, and so she's the first one, but we're seeing an attendance policy for people going.
Has that been an issue in the past with this committee?
We've
out of
seen
curiosity.
it on
No,
a
I don't think
few.
this committee, I think, well, there might have been one person, and that was it.
And there were,
There were some other committees that had some issues.
Okay.
Yeah.
but it's not like we're going to boot them right off. It's not written that way. It's more like she's going to talk to them,
Right.
and we can consider it when we're making reappointments. But if there's a need to, the last committee that had to do this actually sat down with the person, and that person put in a notice to get off the committee.
And we've asked the different committees to speak to the people and let them know there is an attendance requirement, so that we'll have the proper, because other people wanted to join some of the committees, and we didn't choose them over this person. If this person doesn't show up, it's not fair for all the other people who wanted to be on the committees. So all those approve? Thank you. And I want to thank you again for the tour of the airport. It was quite a lot of fun. I think the best part was getting in that old truck with all the duct tape holding it together and going on all those back roads, which I'm kind of wondering if we really had to, but you just thought it would be fun, and it was. And also seeing the Black Hawk helicopter was quite the treat. So I know you arranged that just for me.
Yeah, I had
so
to pull some favors for that one.
Thank you.
Pretty impressive.
Thank you very much. Now, 22554-01, in order to accept the annual audit conducted by, I'll get this wrong again, Whipfly, am I close? Changed the name, LLC, for the fiscal year 2021-22. A motion to approve.
Move we approve the audit report.
Thank you. That was Council Stackpole and Council Martell, second.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Yes, Council Hanselman?
I would just like to thank our finance director and her staff, her team, as well as the finance office of the school department for their amazing work. It's a really big deal, in my opinion, to have what I consider a clean audit in my terms, and it goes not without a lot of work, both for the regular day-to-day operations that our finance director does, but also actually managing the audit itself. So I just want to express my gratitude for all that effort.
Thank you. Did I already do all in favor? That one? Okay, all in favor? Thanks. 6-0, thank you. 22-561-01, in order to review and vote on whether to adopt potential changes to the residential chicken ordinance and overlay zone map. Steve,
I'd like to make a motion to discuss. We can
Okay.
understand it.
All right, so do we,
We just need a second.
we need a second on that? Thank you. So we're just discussing this?
Yep. Let's explain it so we don't dive into weeds.
I'll second it. We can discuss it.
And I say that because he's the one who brought this to our,
So can we
through,
have,
through the process, so I think it's appropriate for him to second it.
Steve, do you want to go through it? You want to start with this?
Yeah, so the action item tonight is not to actually make the amendments, but to have the council view what's being discussed at the subcommittee level and see if there's a support to move that forward before we pay for the advertisement, before we pay for the GIS update and such under that. I think probably from a background perspective, if the council was to look at the memo that I had written at that time in 2014 was when these actions were actually taken. If you look at that time, the City Council tabled the residential domesticated chicken ordinance at the August 19th meeting, sending the ordinance back to the committee to view it from a zoning perspective. So I think the important points of why we have it the way it is right now is expressed in here in that document. So from an administrative point, planning and codes, we looked at the planning and codes, did not recommend the matter of residential chickens to become part of the zoning ordinance, as it would require changes to the land use tables, and those changes would require notification to all landowners citywide for all of the abutters. So there was that. It was a major cost issue and notification issue. Then the amendment of the various zones would also not qualify as an amendment to the city's comprehensive plan and would thus not eliminate the need to notify all property owners. So this is all a legal opinion that we were up against at that time. So the administration continued to recommend that the matter of residential chickens remains a permitted use. So that's why it's a permitted use today, because it wasn't a land use table change. And in doing so, it could be supported from a land use perspective by creating an overlay district. So that's what we currently have on there. And that any permitted activity can be connected via the overlay district of the city. So that's what's expressed in the map. And at that point in time, the allowable zones for the residential chicken overlay was the pre-existing rural residential zone, the rural development zone, the rural mixed-use zone, and the single-family residential zone. Zones that were excluded back then in 2014 was the urban zone, the airport development zone, and the industrial business and the industrial reuse zones. So from there was created, and I'm bringing this up on the map. So this is what the area of exclusion looks like, giving those particular zones. So that's been present through 2004, from 2014 through to current. So in the yellow-colored areas on this map, anywhere in that yellow-colored area can have the residential chickens pursuant to the limitations that are in the ordinance. What's currently being discussed is that, and I'll have to call on Ian Houseel, he's produced a GIS layer for us. It's not yet in our system, but he produced this in-house so we can take a look at that, is that it's going to bring into the overlay zone for the first time the predominance of the urban zone. So Ian, can you show that for us on the screen at this point in time?
I think if you take that council chambers camera and use my share screen.
Yes, Ben, are you able to show the Zoom screen as shared?
Do you see it up on the screen for yourself?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, good. So right now I've got the zoning that you've been talking through. You can see the green area, the blue area, this pink area all down here, the rural mixed use. Here's some more of the green in this area. Those are all areas that are covered within the residential chicken ordinance. So that's this full area that's now highlighted in red. You can see the urban zone predominantly not covered in the ordinance, nor this pink area and the airport development zone. And then if you add in this now shaded orange area, you'll see the area that the committee is discussing whether to consider adding into the zone.
Madam Mayor, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I'm having a hard time hearing him. Is Ian still on site? Could he pop in here easily? I don't know if it's...
He's controlling his computer.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. You know what? You're going to have to take a look at my nose. My phone wasn't working this morning. Is that any better, Counselor?
That is. Thank you.
Yes, I'm sorry about that. Did you hear most of that? That I can walk you through it again. So here's the zoning. That's the basis of where the chicken ordinance came, as Steve walked you through. The green area, the blue area, this pink area being the rural mixed use. That's that map that Steve just had up on the screen. All the areas shaded in red are the areas of the city that are allowed to have chickens. And then what's being discussed is this additional area shaded in orange. That would be the adding in the urban zone area.
Okay, I'd like to point out, because I think Councilor Trench-Montagne had a question earlier about this. This is residential chickens. This has nothing to do with farming. So, and I knew you needed that, yes. And I have to say that, for my own opinion, I don't think I would probably not be in favor of moving this forward to spending all the time and money, knowing that in the meeting that we had about our goals, I don't find this fitting in with that. So that would, but this, I know this happened before that, but I would probably, when I read this whole packet, it's already in existence on what we need, and I think it fits in with what Maine has stated also. So I don't find the need to keep going with it. So that's my opinion. Can we open this up for the rest of you to share your opinions too? No, this is just for discussion whether we want to move this, to keep going with this at the subcommittee and then bring it back to us.
I was just going to say that we should move forward, but Council Tell should have his say because he brought this up. I think the respect he should have for that.
Yep.
Okay.
So I brought this forward because there's been some recent changes at the state level around food sovereignty laws. And I've had constituents ask me about the chicken ordinance. And my understanding at the subcommittee level was that we're planning on reviewing this and if the homeowner met the current requirements, setback and location and cage and all that kind of thing, that it wouldn't be an issue to just allow that within this zone, so.
I guess my question would be, because of the requirements, the restrictions, and putting that in the urban zone, and having everybody work, and paying staff members to work hard and long on this, and to inspect, and to make sure that I just think, is this going to be so costly? Because most places, you don't have enough land in the urban zone to do it. So are we as a city wasting money to put this forward by doing that? And that basically is my concern, because we have people in our neighborhood that do have chickens, and they're fine, but
Right,
our neighborhood, the people have enough land for this.
Well, and there are
so that was a
people in
concern.
the zones, and we even had the code officer at the meeting, and he indicated that there were some probably properties within that zone that would meet the requirements. So I just want to make sure that if they have sufficient property to do that, that they're able to. We're still providing code enforcement for the rest of the city, and if somebody puts in an application and they clearly don't meet the requirements, then probably won't have to have codes go out there at all. So I don't see this as a significant extra burden, and there are fees involved, so it's not like we're doing it for free. So.
Councillor Stackpole?
I just want to point out that this did come out of subcommittee with unanimous consent to move it forward to the council. Jamie's not here this evening. I kind of hate to put words in his mouth. You can correct me if I'm wrong. Oh, he's here. I'm sorry. If I'm not stating this correctly, Jamie, please correct me. But I believe you said that the impact on this really would be minimal. And I think that was an important statement, at least from my perspective. So not hearing anything, we'll leave it at that. I don't believe it's going to have a significant impact if we move forward.
Steve?
Yes, from the committee level, there really was only two things to amend. One was the overlay zone, right? So if you bring the urban zone in, there's only two zones left that would not allow for the residential chickens. That's the airport zone itself and the industrial park. So the industrial park and the airport. You don't want any chickens on the airport, because we have bird issues anyways, right? So, I say that tongue in cheek, but then the other element, so in recognition that the standards that are in the ordinance currently recognizes setbacks of 25 feet from property lines, the amount of land that you have to have for the appropriately constructed chicken coop and such and that. So none of those standards would change. So if you're in the urban zone and you have lot size and setback distances enough, you could place your chicken coop and such under that. So Ben, if you could share my screen at this point, I've got the ordinance up here. I can take you through the only one change that would need to be made there. I don't know why that's looking, the view is different there, Ben. Yeah,
It's too close.
yeah, Ben is zooming, not me, so. Yeah, the whole thing's off. There we go. Okay. All right, so under the definitions, thank you, Ben. Nothing would change under the definitions. Nothing would change under the purpose, why they're providing for the residential chickens. And again, it's female chickens only. There's no roosters in here. They make a lot of noise, right? Requires for a permit. So that permit would still be there. So you'd come in and apply for your permit. And in doing so, you're going to establish the placement and location, the setbacks and such. Permit fees is $25 per year to have a residential chicken permit, and those would be issued by the code department. The number of type, it's 6 chickens per lot. regardless of the number of dwelling units on there. So you have your 6 chickens, females only, no roosters. Has to be non-commercial use, slaughtering is prohibited. The council's also done work as far as the ability for, under the foods, am I saying that right, Councilor Stackpole? Well, not the amendment, but the
law, the bill.
Constitutional amendment?
no, not the constitutional amendment. The
One we passed?
yes,
Sovereignty?
yeah, food sovereignty. Yeah, there we go. So they could sell their eggs as well under this particular act. Under 78-32, there's standards for the enclosures. That's still spelled out here. So none of that is proposed to change, because a lot of that is very good work. I mean, I was actively managing in the state when Tractor Supply came into the state, and the standards for the residential chickens that Sanford largely is carrying here, that was not developed in the vacuum. These were developed statewide because it became, for whatever reason, Tractor Supply came in and people could now buy chickens.
Told you, Tractor Supply cost.
You did.
No, really, but as a manager, we worked on these standards statewide, so there was a collective development of the standards as to where it is. So these are not unique to Sanford in any way, shape, or fashion. And then for the first time, you find the first and only amendment that's being proposed from the subcommittee level is currently hen houses and chicken pens should be located at least 25 feet from all residences on the same or abutting lots. This next element here that I have highlighted in yellow, it says hen houses and chicken pens should be located at least 50 feet from all commercial structures on the same or abutting lots. That's the singular change that's in here because it was discussed at the committee level. If you're going to bring it into the urban zone where the commercial structures are, such as restaurants, stores, and such under that there should be a greater setback to account for that. So that's the singular change that's in there.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, and so if we're voting now, it's to vote to have them, the potential of adopting it, so this is going back again, and then,
So if supported at the council level tonight,
Yeah.
that there's enough wherewithal to put this forward, we'll do the requisite advertisement for the ordinance change. We'll produce the GIS layer that would accompany that. It would then drop into the GIS system for the city. We would post a public hearing, we do a first read, possible amendments if the public input accounts for that. And then upon the second read, the change would become effective, which effectually would include the urban zone in the overlay and this additional singular setback for commercial structures.
there are 2 things here that I think we would need definitions for, and one was under section 78-35, and that's timely manner. What I might consider timely and what another person would consider timely for the uneaten food to be lying around could be 2 different things. So I would like some clarification on what is sanitary conditions for that, what would be safe to have that. So I think that also. And then 78-39, it talks about if a chicken dies, disposing of it in a sanitary manner. Again, I think that needs a definition on what constitutes a sanitary manner. Understanding we all come from different cultures and stuff, so both of these could be totally different depending upon what culture you come from. So I would feel that those 2 things need to go under definitions. So would I have to do that now, or does that come after first reading and an amendment to it? Or can they go back now and add those?
Well, I would suggest that if the council votes to move this forward, then we would take those proposed amendments, as you've outlined those, to the subcommittee level and,
Okay.
and rework it from there to then push that forward for a public hearing.
Sounds great. All right.
So in the urban downtown area that we're doing, so we could potentially have chickens next to restaurants, and I'm not in favor of that.
50 feet away.
Yeah, I'm not in favor of downtown chicken coops. They do have a lot of diseases. I've had chickens for 30 years. My wife does it all. I'm not taking credit, Tina.
That's one of the reasons
But
we
they
left
need
it
to
out
be
of
in the rural, not down, they don't need to be downtown. They need to be out.
So, yes, and can I answer him?
Yes.
So the whole reason, that's why we left the urban zone out.
Okay,
And so now we're discussing, should we put the urban zone in?
no.
So should we even advertise to ask other people? We're not voting about whether we're going to do it right now. We could still vote against doing it. Do we go to public hearing? I mean, is there general support that we should have it in the urban zone? If there's no general support to have it in the urban zone, we shouldn't spend the money on a public hearing.
What about, are there any grandfathered downtown that had chickens their whole lives that we could respect? Because obviously I'd respect that.
No, so the historical perspective of zoning, zoning came into the United States because of animal husbandry. The first act of zoning was to zone animal husbandry out of the compact downtown areas for sanitation purposes, right? The second to that was the formation of the NFPA, the Fire Act, and such under that. So those are the two founding reasons why zoning came to be as a historical perspective. So, you know, historically, you've moved those out into more appropriate spaces, and now you're discussing about bringing them back into the very urban zone. That is the reason why zoning was first established and pushed them out, so.
And I would have to say my concern would be, we've just come through COVID. We've just had diseases, and we've talked about diseases and how they transfer from one to another. We've just had a lot of birds killed because of diseases that were spreading amongst them. So I kind of wonder why we're going backwards, you know, with this. So that would be a concern, you know, I would have. Councilor Martell?
Yeah, I can understand those concerns. Flocks that are not in contact with other flocks tend to not have issues with that sort of thing. It's when you have extremely large, like, commercial operations, where you have trucks going in and out that may contact other flocks, and people that may be amongst other commercial entities is where you'll see a lot of that. I grew up with chickens. We never really had any problems, other than animals trying to get to them. So, but they were a great source of eggs, and if you have priced eggs lately, you can understand why people might like having them.
Can I ask, since you grew up with chickens, how big was the lot you grew up on?
My parents had a pretty significantly large lot on the outside of town.
And I know that, but we're talking about a very dense area, it's a very dense area of our community, the majority of it. And the reason we excluded it back in 2014 is because we knew it was dense. It would be hard to fit chickens in. It could become a problem in such a dense area. So the question is, do we want to continue forward with adding the urban zone?
No.
Well, I'll maintain that, you know, if they're meeting all the requirements, that I think we should let people do that. And, you know, this may come up in court case as far as the recent constitutional amendments, so we'll see where that goes, but thank you.
We can always bring in Representative Billy Bob Falkenham from the Food Sovereignty. He was big on that bill that he pushed through. I worked with him several times on other bills. If we can bring that for a resource to clear up anything, I'm sure he would Zoom with us on another occasion. But I'm not in favor of any chickens in downtown at all. It's just the avian flu wiped out half the chickens in the world, and now we're going to put them in an impact area. I just think that's a big no-no. And I'm all for chickens, I'm all for fresh eggs, but if you're living in downtown Sanford, I can't see, outside of a few exceptions, that would be advantageous for our city at all. And it kind of alarms me for disease. And again, they can be right next to a restaurant, whether it's 50 feet back or not. I say it's not enough to remove them from the equation. That's why I asked about any of the existing downtown people that have would have chicken coops. We want to honor them because they already exist. And other than that, I'd say that's a recipe for disaster, and really don't want to bring that on to the taxpayers. Thank
Since
you.
we've excluded it since 2014, I suspect unless they are unknown to us, we shouldn't have chickens in the urban zone.
Yeah. And I would also, we're trying to develop downtown, and I wonder how much of a hindrance a place, if a restaurant wanted to open and there was a chicken coop next to them, if, like in the future when we want to sell the fire department and somebody wants to put a restaurant there, is that going to be an issue? So I don't want to open up stuff that could be an issue, from preventing the growth of downtown. So any other discussion? Okay, all those,
We don't have a motion.
oh, didn't you motion? I thought you did.
Just to discuss.
And I thought he,
Because I didn't know where the motion would go.
oh, okay. Do we have a motion to, excuse me, to adopt?
To do anything.
To do anything with this? There we go.
I don't want to make a motion.
I'll make a motion to move this forward.
Thank you, Councilor Martell. Do we have a second? It dies to lack of a second. Is that correct? Is that the right term? Okay, thank you. First of all, I want to thank Councilor Martell for thinking of the people in that area, because I know it's his compassion towards people, and he just wanted to be very inclusive. So I want to thank him for that, because he's always very caring, and I know he always has the best intentions when he does put something forth. So thank you very much. All right, moving on to the next one. Order to approve a proposed ordinance prohibiting, and now this is the first reading of the one we already discussed under the hearing, to let you, Pete, to let you know what was going on with this. An ordinance to promote commercial vehicles, prohibit commercial vehicles, tractors, trailers, boats, campers, recreation vehicles, all-terrain vehicles, snowmobiles, unregistered vehicles from parking all night on any public way. This item must be read on 2 separate occasions. This is the first reading. Do I have a motion to push this to a second reading? We don't, it told me I had to do that.
Motion, really?
Yes, from our meeting. I was paying attention. I
Okay.
listened to Steve when he told me this stuff.
I'll motion that we move this to a second reading.
Do I have a second? Excuse me, Councilor Trench-Montagne? A second. All right, thank you.
Are there any changes people want to make? Do they want the subcommittee to review anything before it moves further?
Yeah, the discussion? Yes.
I believe it was Connolly that had a question around the right-of-way. So maybe that needs to be clarified a little bit, because it is off the pavement a certain number of feet. I'm not sure exactly what that number is, but people may park their boat trailer off the pavement, but still be within that right-of-way, and I just want to make sure that we're clear on what that looks
Center
like.
line out you measure, right, Steve?
Generally, that's good. Sometimes the center line is not in the center of the width of right-of-way. It moves itself back and forth. The public, you can typically look at a street, right? And you can see the placement of the poles. The power line poles are almost always placed right on the edge of the right-of-way. So in the examples that I showed at the recent Public Safety Committee, there were multiple occurrences of vehicles off the pavement, sort of, kind of, but still parked within the width of right-of-way. Same thing with
Right.
trailers and other units. There were examples where, because the street was extremely narrow, half the cars parked on the sidewalk in order to keep out of the travelway. And then there's other examples of it's parked half on the sidewalk and half over onto whatever other property. So all of those are violations of parking in the public way, whether it's on the paved surface or on the city's width of right-of-way. When it comes to snow removal and other street hazards, it is a hazardous situation, so.
Yeah, I can definitely understand it for the the snow removal, and thank you for sharing those pictures the other day. I just want to make sure that we're clear, because I could see people just being off the pavement and thinking they're okay, and then they wake up to a ticket. So maybe we can clarify that. I don't know if there's, obviously right away is, you'd have to go look at the maps to see exactly what it is for each street, because I think it does vary, but I'm just wondering if there's some way we can clarify that, or maybe in this instance, off pavement would be sufficient for non-winter time for this sort of thing.
Councilor Hanselman?
Well, I think Councilor Martell has a good point, but I wonder if it would be addressed outside of the ordinance and as part of our communication, part of the communications that comes out of our communication director's, public service announcement or social media, and I do think that there's a misconception about where the public way is and is not, myself included, had to really look at my property going up Lincoln Street and go, I wonder how much of this grass that I thought was mine is actually city right of way. You know what I mean? So I paused and looked at my property. So I do agree, communication, but I wonder if we could do it outside of the ordinance and just part of a communication plan.
Right. Councilor Stackpole?
Yeah, is there a different term we can use beside public way? We use public way as a backup, but you mentioned telephone poles, something like that we could use, but if that wasn't accurate, we could fall back to actually looking at the map. So there'd be a rule of thumb for somebody to go out and say, there's an example, hypothetical, there's the telephone pole. Okay, I can't be there, or I've got to be somewhere else. Just a thought.
Matt Hill wants to, I think, address, I see his little hand up there. So, Matt?
Yes, it's very good discussion on what's the right of way. So, as City Manager Buck previously said, these historical maps are often very good indicators and often the best indicators of where the right of way is. But the only certain way that you can find the right of way, other than going out there and physically locating the pins and then having a licensed surveyor identify where the right of way is, that's basically it. You have to have a licensed surveyor identify where the right of way is for anything you want to be certain of. What we use very often, a fallback position, is where the Sanford GIS property lines are shown on our map. Our GIS consultant was formerly a guy named Tom Burns, and he was just extremely fastidious about getting our maps as close to accurate as possible. So when we're out there trying to make these determinations, one, we tend to be very conservative. Like if there's an enforcement action or there's some kind of like trespass issue where we may need to set foot on somebody's property, we try to get as conservative as possible, and we don't take an action unless it's absolutely very clear cut. If there's any question, we will go back, we'll consult the GIS maps, we'll try to locate pins, and then if absolutely necessary, we'll have a surveyor go demarcate. And just, the other thing I wanted to mention was that there's also a prescriptive right-of-way, which hasn't been mentioned tonight. So if there's a city sidewalk that happens to run over the corner of a property, guess what? The city actually, because the sidewalk has been there forever, has a prescriptive right to maintain that sidewalk as well. So very, very similar, say you've got a tree that's very close to, say, a stop sign, and the tree is solidly on your property, but the tree's branches are now obscuring a stop sign. Again, the city has a prescriptive right to, trim those branches to maintain the public right of way. So, or essentially protect public safety. So, as Diane Connolly said earlier, she got 3 different answers, and that's really because there are 3 different answers. It's different every time, and oftentimes there's no 2 situations that are the same.
Yeah, so if I could address we're not talking about splitting hairs here. So for all of the examples that I showed the other day in the subcommittee meeting, it was blatant. So one of the examples was a car, the center line of its bumper, was in alignment with the telephone pole. At least half of that car is in the right of way, right? we're not talking, we're out there measuring to the half inch or something like that. It's just blatant, right? So nobody's going to get a ticket for something that's, within a fraction of an inch. It's, when they're parked, when their tires are on the sidewalk, they know they're in the width of right-of-way. They're parked on the city's property inappropriately, especially when a vehicle's parked half on a sidewalk. You know that that's not a parking spot, right? So I'm not concerned about the exact location of the right-of-way and such under that. You know the abuse when you see it, right? We've changed a lot of our ordinances over the years. So, for example, I think the noise ordinance is a prime example. It used to be so many decibels and such under that. You had to have an ASTM calibrated sound meter that had to account for the relative humidity for the day, and this, that, and the other. It's impossible to enforce that, but people wanted something done about noise. Loud exhaust on certain motorcycles that have punched their baffles out and all that sort of deal. So the noise ordinance is very simple now when it comes to those type of vehicles. If an officer pulls you over because you have an exceptionally loud vehicle, your defense is you can go to your inspection location and come back and say, I have a legal exhaust system. Therefore, I was not in violation of your noise ordinance. If you can't do that, you were in violation of the noise ordinance, right? It doesn't get more simple than that. In these occurrences, if you're inappropriately parked in the right-of-way, it's just easy to observe that and know. Our police department has taken extraordinary efforts. They knock on the door. They try to find the person that owns the vehicle. They'll knock on the doors in the proximity, trying to find the vehicle's owner before they put a ticket on there, right? And usually even then it has to be a repetitive occurrence, right? So, this isn't something that just out nailing everything that there is.
Thank you. And Diane Conley, I think your hand is up again. Is that correct?
Yes, Madam Mayor. Look, I'm not trying to throw a wrench into the works here. And I fully agree with Mr. Buck with some of the stuff that I even see around here. It's ridiculous what people do. It's common sense. Get your stuff off so they can plow the roads or whatever they have to do. But there's a lot of confusion about what actually is, or an idea as to what the right-of-way is. When I'm told it's 12 and a half feet from the center line, and then someone comes in like then Mr. Casserly, who used to work for the city, and tells me it's 26 and a half feet, that's quite a difference. And that's what I'm getting at. There's got to be just some type of clarity. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane. Any other comments?
Is it defined in state law? Because if it's defined in state law, I don't know why we're having this circle.
The overwhelming majority of roads that were laid out in the state of Maine are 3-rod roads.
Right.
50-foot width of right-of-way. That's the standard layout from the 1600s on, right? 3-rod roads, 16 and a half feet and a fraction.
This is the weeds, and I consider this the weeds. I think there are legal definitions of right-of-ways, especially municipal right-of-ways, that would fully cover us on this ordinance.
There are multiple examples. So I dealt with a gentleman that had a legitimate complaint. When the hydrant was cleared on the largest snowstorm that we had this year, he felt that when they cleared the snow around the hydrant, that they had inappropriately pushed it onto his lawn, right, on his property. Pull the GIS up while I'm talking with him on the phone. I said, you have a shrub on the left-hand corner of your property. That's your property line, correct? Why, yes, it is. And you look on the right-hand side of your property, there's a telephone pole. That's the other property line that you have. Why, yes, I believe that's correct. So there's almost, in that situation, there was almost 12 feet of mowed lawn that he mowed down to the pavement, right? That's inside the city's width of right-of-way. So when that snow was clear, and the hydrant is in that right-of-way, it was pushed 4 to 5 feet. The other side of the hydrant is still on the city's right-of-way, but he wasn't aware that that was the city's property. This was his first winter there. So we had that conversation, cleared up, and we're good to go.
Fantastic. Who? Oh, Matt, go ahead. And
Yeah, just On the desire to formalize like the three-rod road or a set right-of-way throughout the city, I have been involved on roadway projects where the state has officially redefined the right-of-way because of a lack of survey information. And there is a process for that, but it is not for the faint of heart. Fortunately, the project that I did a major project on that and there were no complaints, but if anyone contests it, it starts in Superior Court and it goes from there. So, and that's for each person who has a complaint. So there are ways to formalize everything, but until then, you will find, even looking at the GIS, that it's quite variable, not only throughout the city, but on each road.
Thank you. Council Hanselman?
Two quick things. One, I just want Steve to know that his pictures were impactful to me because it caused a small family dispute on the last snow ban. I made my husband further move the cars back into the driveway so they didn't hang over the sidewalks. I said, my vehicles cannot show up on a picture of City Council. Do not want to be an example. And then my real comment is that I really struggled with these ordinance changes, as folks know. We've talked about it a lot. My particular struggle was with the recreational equipment and trailers, but I really did change my thoughts on this, and I am in support of the ordinance as it's presented, and look forward to seeing it come back for a second read.
Okay, so we've had a first and a second. Oh,
Yeah,
Council
I mean,
Stackel?
I just wanted to say, isn't it the responsibility of the vehicle owner, whatever it is, to determine whether or not it's in the right of way? I mean, I would think that those individuals should have some, sure, you cannot know, but, and then I would assume the police would knock on your door and let you know. But I think that there's some individual responsibility here in either looking up on our GIS system, if they're able to do that, or making a phone call and saying, this is where I want to park in this snowstorm, can I park there? Yeah. And get some kind of an answer.
All right.
So that's kind of, I think maybe we should leave it.
Okay, we're to the point of voting on this. All those in favor of moving this ahead to a second reading? 6-0. Thank you. All right.
There were no amendments.
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
Yep. All right, now for 2333-01, in order to discuss procedure and a timeline for filling the vacant city council seat. And I would, Steve, I'm going to wait on you for just 1 second, because I think after reading everything, I've kind of got this down to 4 points that might save us a bunch of time tonight. Simply put, the mayor cannot vote on her replacement, my replacement from city council, but I may discuss, so I don't have to vote. So there are basically 3 choices we have. One is an appointment by the council, which means, say we appointed them in March 2023, that person would serve till December 31st, 2023. That would be a short term. Then in that November, before that December, they would have to run again for the rest of that term, which would then end in 2025. The next choice we have is a special election. 2024.
It gets confusing, but
Yeah.
December 31st, 2024.
Okay.
January, December.
And the special election would then go until the end of that term. But it would, if we had a special election, it would be costly. And I don't know about the June election, if we could use that one, if enough people vote in the June election. Do we have to have a certain quota?
No. So we had a legal opinion on that, and I put that information in this particular council pack, because when Councilor Tuttle passed away, the council made a decision to hold that at special election that June. The individual was elected there. For that particular position, the position That term was up that cycle, so it was only a 6-month remaining on there. So the individual occupied that. But for the seat that you have now vacated, there's this year and next year. So there's 2 years left on that position, so.
You're saying I caused the problem?
I-
It's okay. All right, so basically, we're down to, besides the fact I can't vote, appointment by council, and then we could discuss what that would look like, if that's what we choose, a special election, or do nothing. So we could have a discussion on that, and then if, say you choose appointment by council, then we could discuss what that should look like and what that might entail. And some of the things we spoke about was we could put an application out that people would that have to fill out and tell us why they wanted to be a part of this, and then we could have a subcommittee look at the applications and then come forth with these are the best choices, and then we'd probably have to do an interview process, which might have to be live. So those are things that we could consider doing under that. So let's open this up for, I don't know, do we have to take a vote on?
Bob's ready to go.
Okay, Bob, go ahead.
Yeah, so I just have a question. So Councilor Brink's original term would expire December 31st, 2024? Okay, I gotta remember what year I'm in. So, okay, so now I'm following the scenario. But the point being, the point, usually I figure out what day it is, but now we're into years. So, so my point being, we're appointing somebody to fill Councilor Brink's term.
No, to a part of it. We can't appoint, we are not allowed to appoint past the next regular election. Like, whoever gets voted in November, if that's the way we chose to go, whoever would be voted in November, whether it's the person we appointed or someone else, would serve out that last year. We can only appoint.
They only go to 2000,
Okay.
the end of
And that's-
December.
That's in our bylaws or state law or?
That's our.
So in the city charter, if you choose to.
You should know the city charter, should
If you choose to appoint as a council, you choose, and you make an appointment of somebody to fill this vacancy, that appointment will only serve till December 31st of this calendar year. And then the remaining 1 year that's left there, people would take out papers for in November, but they would have to, because there will also be 2 council seats up in November for elections. So you would have to take papers out for either one of the 2 seats that are being termed out, which would be a 3-year term, or take out papers for that 1 remaining year term. So, but any appointment you do now only serves till December 31st. That's pursuant to the city charter.
Okay, so potentially we're going to have three councilors
Running.
up for election November of 23.
Unless we choose to-
Regardless of your action, you'll have 3
Councilor
seats.
Trenchmont Dames?
I just wanted to talk about the cost of a special election to see if we are not doing a service to us, our voters. Would it be better for us to take an application and look at it and see? I think that's the way I'm leaning towards, going towards coming up with something sensible and seeing if we can point somebody from March until December 31st. I think that would be the way to go if we find somebody. If not, we have to have a special election. I just want to know the cost of
I'm leaning
what we're spending.
that way, too.
I'm sorry,
Yep.
go ahead.
So it's about $5,000 to do an election. The gubernatorial ones are more expensive than that because of the printing costs and such under that. So, but use $5,000 as a cost. There will be an election in June because you have, at a bare minimum, you have to have the school budget validation vote as a state requirement. We're not sure yet if there's going to be primaries. They're coming up, presidential primaries, as was done by special election March.
That would be next
4 years ago.
Next year.
Next year.
Is it next year?
Yeah, so this is the lowest voting election we would have. That's my issue. not necessarily the cost, the fact that it is the lowest year, because
Right,
it's
there's
only
gonna
the
be
school budget
crickets.
validation, nothing else. I don't like putting someone on for a year and a half at that point with such a low voter turnout.
So-
Right, they
So
could
right
get
now,
under
the
1,000
school,
votes.
the school district will reimburse us for holding that June election, if they're the only thing on there.
Okay,
If you come on with a counselor position on there, we'll share those expenses.
okay. I think that it's responsible to see, has other cities appointed a term for council?
We've done it before.
We have, and
I've been on the city council when we've done it before.
seamlessly, would that be the most responsible from your experience?
It is not a bad process. You know, they put a letter of interest in, you let them talk about themselves a little bit, you hear from them, you know, you get an idea of whether they would be open-minded, they're going to be good people to work with, that, you know, even if they disagree with you, you know, is there disagreement in such a way that you can be in a room with them, have a healthy conversation, and move past it? So you get that vibe from.
Well, they also get to try out it.
Right.
Maybe they don't want to run after they do it for 6 months.
It's a good process. It's a good process.
Yeah.
Bob?
Councilor Trans-Marchand, it might be less responsible for us not to fill a seat. I think you need to think of it that way. If we run into a 3-3 tie going through the budget process, motion dies because, you know, we can fix those things, but I think we need to have that seventh individual on the council, yeah, as soon as we can get it done.
I just wanted to share that I like the idea of an appointment process. Second to that, I would go for just the regular November election myself.
Counselor Martell, what do you think?
Yeah, I prefer to do what we did with Tuttle's seat and leave it up to the voters. I understand that it typically would be a low voter turnout, but, you know, the city council position is a important position, and I want to make sure that the voters have someone they feel is representing them and their values and their concerns, and have their say, even if it is for a short period of time. I understand there is a cost, but we do have a June election anyway for the school budget. So it's not the only thing that they'd be coming out for. But I have concerns with just appointing someone, just because there's really not much input from the constituents. So, thank you.
Councilor Hanselman, did you have a comment to make?
Oh, well, no, I hear what Councilor Martell is saying, and I guess I would just say that our constituents put the faith in us to sit in these seats, and that our charter gives us the power to do an appointment in this special kind of unique situation. So that's where I feel comfortable with that approach.
Okay. Any more discussions? All right, so I think we're looking at two things, and we can vote on each one. And I think what I'm hearing Council Martell talk about is special election, then I'm hearing several other people talk about appointment. So let's see how many people think an appointment would be the way you want to go. All right, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And the special election would be 1, Martell. All right. So now we talked about we want an appointment, so we need a discussion around that. Is that something where we think, like it's done in the past, that we advertise for it on our website and whatever else easily without costing a whole bunch? And then they fill out an application, and then we have an interview process? Or did you have a committee that looked at the applications first?
No, we all looked at them together, because it's all 6 of us. We all looked at them together, and I don't think we picked and chose who we would speak. One time we did interviews. Another time we had them come and we sat and they told us about themselves, but the public was able to watch.
Oh, nice.
And, yeah, so that's, you know, the public is engaged in who we're choosing, and we went from there. And then we made an appointment.
So it sounds like application, and then an interview process here, so everybody could see it. Is that kind of, Council Trench-Montagne?
So the public would be involved, they have a say, and that's important to us, right?
I don't think it would meet, it doesn't meet executive session, I don't think. We're appointing someone who serves the public, so we
Good.
can't.
Can we do
it's
it
not like
publicly?
appointing it's not like
Yep,
hiring
he's
someone.
saying we can.
Okay.
All right. Councilor Martell?
Quick question, Steve. Maybe you know, but Sue would probably be able to answer too. Would somebody that possibly would be appointed need to have signatures like we would normally do for a ballot?
No, not for an appointment. They just have to be, the singular requirement is a qualified voter of the city of Sanford.
We can't take anybody from Alfred.
Good point.
Glad your mic was off on that one, but
I said nothing negative.
I would suggest a letter of interest, maybe, instead of an application with
Okay.
maybe a two-page limit.
Does everybody agree?
Something
A
like that.
letter of
I like the
interest?
limit part.
Two-page limit? Okay.
Yeah, can't do it in 2 pages, then.
And also, I would like questions from the council that we can collate. So if you guys would all send me, and what I'll do is I will text or email you guys, so because I know you forget. So if we could get questions going also, that would be fantastic, so we know what we're looking for also.
What we're going to ask.
What we're going to ask. Of course, that would be secret. Can't tell them. It's going to be a surprise. All right? Yes, yep, that would be fantastic. Okay, so do we need to take a vote on that? I don't know.
Take a formal vote?
Let's take a formal vote then.
I'll make a
All
motion.
those, go ahead.
I'll make a motion that we seek letters of interest from registered voters in the city of Sanford who are interested in serving until December 31st, 2023 as a city councilor, and that after we receive those letters, we set up a process whereby we interview them and allow the public to see the interview process, and then appoint someone if we find someone who works.
Do we have a second?
It would just be a resident, though, wouldn't it? That doesn't have to be, you said registered voter, they just have to be a resident.
No, you got to be a
I think it
registered
has to be a
voter.
registered voter.
Okay, yeah, I'm learning all kinds of things, what year it is, and.
I'm going to send you the charter.
Second. Knock that right off. But second.
All right, all those in favor? Super, good, it's 4 and 1 against?
You're 5. You would make 5.
5.
To 1.
Yes. Okay, thank you. All right, now, comments, council members' comments, and while you still got your pens out, this is a reminder that this Saturday at 8 a.m., the school budget will begin here. So if any of you can attend that, and he didn't know how long, superintendent didn't know how long that would go. And then televised, so, and it'd be recorded, so if you aren't available on Saturday, you can go back and watch it. And the other 2 things, we have 2 workshop days, the next 2 Tuesdays at 5 p.m., and sandwiches will be provided, because I know at 5 p.m., most of you are coming directly from work to here. And we've got a lot of work to do, and we're going probably late, so we'll keep you guys energized. So, oh, yes, and you have to get your orders in to her if you haven't already done it. Any other comments from council members? Councilor Trench-Montagne?
I just have a comment out to the voters. I read this today on Facebook, and I didn't want it to go without being passed along. It's quite an accomplishment. It says, "Proud of you, James, on one of the most fierce and intense wrestlers I've ever coached. You not only grow as a wrestler, but shown the willingness to share your knowledge to others for the overall success of the team." And what this gentleman did, his name is James Blood, and he won 100 wrestling matches for our high school.
Wow.
And the coach is Paul Rivard, and I just wanted both to know you're treasures to the city, and thank you for doing what you're doing, and I didn't want that to go without being recognized.
Could you also share that you were recognized by a magazine this week? Could you share that with the counselors, please?
Yes, I was in an article in Weed magazine for running for office and trying to help others. couple bills I passed, we saved a lot of lives. And they just wanted to recognize that people stepping up and running for office, they should when it's their turn. And again, we're looking for counsel. You people out there, it is your turn. So let's get the applications in.
All right, thank you. Anyone else with any comments?
So
Deputy Mayor?
For the first time, because I lived in Scotland for the mad cow disease, I wasn't able to give blood, so I gave blood yesterday. It was an easy process. They're looking for blood in the American Red Cross. So if you're able to donate, I think there's one coming up at City Hall, there's one coming up at North Parish, and they seem to cycle through those 3 locations. I was at Nassau. So I don't mind needles at all. So I had always been trying to give blood, but they said, no, you must have a disease because you didn't eat meat, and there was mad cow disease in Scotland. So.
Excellent.
I tried to tell them I didn't eat meat back then, but anyway, so if you are able, I know they have some appointments left on the next 2 upcoming.
Any other comments? Okay, moving on, future agenda items, and remember, we decided at our workshop that the agenda items need to relate to our goals, so we stay on task. So does anyone have any future agenda items?
I think just to point out, coming out of the housing land bank, we talked about starting to look at Airbnbs. So I want just to point out for the public's sake that we're going to start looking at potential legislation on Airbnbs.
Thank you.